All right, welcome everyone to the Tuesday, January 7th Working Group Component Standard Meeting. Happy New Year. Hope everyone's well rested after the break. Enjoyed your holidays. So we're just starting to pick up again for the new year. So everyone's, I'm sure, going through email and like catching up after the break. So don't want to do too much right away, but I did have a couple things. Some people did make some progress over the break. So Savita looks like made some progress on kubelet flag migrations, and that's starting to move forward. So that's really exciting to see that work getting done. There's a couple of people I need to check in with. One is Praveen Sastry, who was planning on doing some work on solving the instance-specific config problem and writing a CAP. So I need to check in and see if there's been some progress there. That may block us soon if it's not done. So I want to make sure that's moving forward. And then if anyone, I don't know if anyone has seen it yet, but there is a KEP out for a new structured logging. I think by Sarathias. I hope I spelled that right. I will get a link and put it in the notes, but that's kind of a major logging overhaul for all of Kubernetes, and it connects to our working group. So I've taken a look at it. Other folks might want to take a look at that. How is everyone? Maybe am I muted? No.
Good.
Good, cool. So that's what I had. I think Alex was planning on coming today and had some questions on some things.
Over the break, I was actually rebasing on Ross's work in kubedm, which just hits a lot of component config stuff. And there's some interesting decisions that I'm learning from. So
Cool.
thanks for doing that work, Ross.
Yeah, we have time. I don't know if you guys want to talk a little bit about that, kind of share what you're working on.
Yeah, I mean, the crux of it is that we used to index the component configs in memory with their internal versions by kind. And since those APIs are in different groups, when things would change groups, then you have a hard time dealing with multiple groups for the same kind. So Russ's work actually indexes the configs by group, so that we can navigate them at a top level a little bit easier. And then in that process, everything was kind of more isolated from the rest of the code, and mostly it just acts on the external versions.
Yeah, so the idea is to just reverse the way we actually manage component configs. And we previously, as you mentioned, used kinds, and kinds are not like the best solution, simply because kind names can actually change, or even have the same kind name in between different groups, and this is a problem for kubedm. So we actually reversed all and we went to use groups as an indexing solution for kubedm. And this way also allows us to basically encapsulate most of the version specific stuff, and basically versions are actually version configs are hardly visible outside of this component of kubedm.
Got it. So can you like maybe also share a little context on like what you're indexing, kind of like what subsystem of kubedm is?
Yeah, so basically kubedm is used to deploy several components that have support for component configs. Like these are currently only the kubelet and kubeproxy, but we also are thinking in expanding this into the controller manager, the scheduler, and the API server when they actually gain better versions of component configs. So this is basically a component inside of kubeadm that is used to centrally manage component configs. And this is basically generate them, replace them, upgrade them, and like do all kinds of fancy stuff whenever this is needed. So basically this is an internal change, and it mostly like affected Lee's add-on manager. And this is like probably not very interested to this group. Also, the work on this refactoring is actually pretty much a result of the discussion we actually had several months ago on component config management, upgrades and defaulting and stuff validation. And basically, we actually moved away from trying to upgrade component configs and instead moved into the direction where we actually have users to migrate them, or if they were actually generated by kubeadm, have kubeadm just scrap the old configs and generate new ones.
Got it. Yeah, that's probably easier for now. Since we don't seem to be able to figure out what way we want to do, like have a binary API for that or something.
Yeah, and like last year, on like some of the discussions here, we actually had cluster API folks basically having the same issue as kubeadm had, and this is probably basically the first time kubeadm actually hit this, and probably other components in the Kubernetes ecosystems are going to actually hit this like multiple times, and cluster API is probably one of the next components to do this, and probably some centralized form of KEP at some point may be meaningful, especially whenever these are like more than one component that have to deal in a strange way with component configs.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Cool. Well, it's good to hear that that's moving forward, at least making some progress in solving the problem for now.
One question I did have reading the code and like writing new or extending the implementation is, it seems like we no longer in kubeadm are actually importing internal types. Correct me if I'm wrong, Russ.
Yes, this is correct. We no longer import internal types for component configs, and this is actually like it was a pretty urgent work, and I think that it actually shipped with 1.17, and it was necessary like prerequisite to get kubeadm out of the KK tree.
Mm-hmm. And then basically the thought there is that kubeadm will only support it's basically using an external API, right? Even though the tool operates on these structures, like it's only working with a single version, right?
Yeah, currently only with single versions. It can be extended in the future to support multiple versions of a single group, but currently only single versions.
And this means that 1.17 can only deserialize a single version of these APIs, right?
This is going to ship like with the current release cycle, so this hasn't yet shipped.
Okay.
But yeah, currently only a single group and version is going to be supported per component. Mm-hmm. In the future, we may actually extend it a little bit, but then we end up with how should we migrate and stuff like that. So currently, it's much more easier to just support a single group and version, and basically get migrations and stuff for the users to do them.
And that's with just as a background, because the reason for that might be a little confusing, but for the benefit of everyone on the call. So the trouble with using an internal type, such as like the kube proxy configuration in kubeadm, is that the external type lives in the kube proxy repository, and then the internal type actually lives in Kubernetes. And there is a parallel effort that influences the decision to not use the internal type of reducing kubeadm's, eliminating kubeadm's dependencies on Kubernetes, so that kubeadm can be moved out of tree. So hopefully that is helpful. And then the reason I'm asking this question is because I'm working with another component config API that is completely out of tree in the add-ons repo. And so that like makes me ask the question, can I use the internal type in an external repository? What do you think, Ross?
You shouldn't.
Yeah, technically said, you shouldn't, simply because the internal type is bound to changes. So at some point you may actually want to bump the imported version a little bit, and then you suddenly find out that the internal types have changed and you need to change a bunch of code in your repository, and this is basically getting you nowhere. So
Except
you should.
It's if you wanted to actually do anything with that API, though, like call a library that wanted to function on it, then the version of that library that you were using would also need to accept a specifically versioned struct.
Yes, you need to basically allow for the external interface of that library to just use the external APIs.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then you need to, so if it's in code, it's even a little trickier. You need to make sure you're both importing the same version.
Yes. Yeah, or the API would need to have versioned inputs.
Like the same code version, not because we can add fields without bumping the API version. So like if you're consuming the exported, like the staging repo for Kubelets APIs, you need to make sure you have the same version of that. You both expect the same version. There's a little bit of leeway because like with Go modules, you'll just use one version of that dependency across your entire build. And as long as like, and you shouldn't be referencing any like weird field names. So it should work, but it's just something to be aware of.
Yeah, it's like if you were on an older version of kubeadm that said it was using v1 alpha 2 and then v1 alpha 2 added fields.
Right. It'd be like if you had another dependency that was using, you know, the Kubelets like staging APIs repo, and then Kubelet had a new field and that dependency updated, but you didn't, then you'd have a problem until you updated. So that's something to be just.
And the trouble with that is actually a new problem from a usability perspective, because now we have the strict serialization, which doesn't allow unknown fields.
Yeah, that's maybe a little. I was thinking just like if you're literally just calling like functions in code with the structs.
Yeah.
Not serializing anything, but yeah. So the other thing, Ross, and I'm sure you guys have this, but just to make sure it's in your release process, when a new version of Kubernetes comes out, like make sure you've updated all those API dependencies, even if the group versions haven't changed, because there might be new fields that you need to expose.
Yeah, we will surely actually keep close ties with the Kubernetes version. We haven't yet decided on a like strict versioning or even the exact methodology upon which we are going to tuck kubeadm out of tree. But at this point, we are thinking on basically matching pretty closely even patch releases. So whenever Kubernetes patch release is released, kubeadm patch release is going to be released too.
Great.
Interesting.
That makes sense because you have to do the upgrades.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, patches wouldn't always necessarily, like we may decide to patch kubeadm in response to a release bug on .o, which I think would actually be quite beneficial for KubeADM as a project, because we've had several .o bug releases where things were overseen, and then not every Kubernetes patch release may warrant a KubeADM release, but
Yeah, that is correct, but probably it's going to cause much more confusion amongst users to have different
yeah,
patch release numbers, and from like that standpoint, we're probably going to end up just patching KubeADM and releasing it anyways.
yeah. We can do interstitial patches using like the Semver extension or something in the end,
Yeah.
like -1.
Yeah, there is a document by Lumir somewhere in Google Docs, and you can actually suggest some ideas there because nothing is yet final.
Okay. Lubomir is always working on so many things. It's so impressive. So
Yeah.
Cool. Well, yeah, not to get on too long of a rant about KubeADM governance, but that's what's happening in component config land with arguably the biggest user of component config at the moment. And then, yeah.
I think for this year, our big goal around component config should just be getting every component to having a beta API that's stable and like being able to wipe the flags away.
Yeah, to that point, it was kubeproxy, the kubeproxy flag issue that Savita put up.
I think Savita's doing the kubelet one.
Oh yeah, they're kubelet flags. That's right. There's like run once in there and all that. If you were either working with Savita, or well, I mean, Savita, do you want to, if you're able, do you want to talk about your work a little bit here?
Sure. Hi. Hello, everyone. Happy New Year.
Please take the floor. Feel free to.
So, I have been looking through all the flags, thanks to Mike who gave me an overview and walkthrough of all the code, and Mike who put additional flags in there. So I compiled all of them, I categorized them, and I created an issue. I'm not sure if we want to tackle everything all together, but I thought it's good to have all of them in one place.
Yeah, thanks very much for putting that together. It looks really great. It's going to be really helpful to track, all those in one place for the kubelet, as opposed to spread out. And I think, like we talked about, we can start with just moving one of them to make sure we've got the process down, and then we can just get it rolling.
Sure. So I'm gonna follow the example PR that you have you have on the documentorship document, and I will also document things along the way. I did notice some of the files, the file location paths changed, and it has been updated in one of the documents. I'm not sure if there are any other references, but I will check them, and I am excited to start migrating the flags.
Woo!
If there are anyone, if there is anyone who wanna help join, they are welcome, because there are a lot of flags.
Awesome. Great. So if anyone wants to help, you can reach out to Savita or me on Slack, and we'll hook you up.
Thank
you. Do we have an idea on what features we want to target for like a V1 beta 1 for the component configs, like the object meta stuff or anything like that?
Yeah, it's a great question. So the number one thing is of course just getting the sort of existing options exposed in the component config API so that we can move away from the flags that are currently used to set those. And then I think, you know, we're kind of in a fortunate place with our API conventions in that we can add stuff without changing the version. So I think we can sort of address the object meta thing orthogonally, and we can bring that into V1 Beta 1 if it takes a little longer.
So a little comment on the object meta stuff. At Cube8am, we decided not to basically go forward with it just for now, simply because it's actually needed only for customize at the moment, at least. And customize is basically not ideal, and probably it should actually be the one to change, or basically think of something else. So, for example, Kind actually dropped my support, and they don't need object meta as of today.
Interesting. So, okay, so I think Phil Witchrock also is trying to set up a meeting for SIG-CLI. It was on maybe Friday this week. And these were some of the agenda items, and he had some other ideas around how to do, you know, config transformation and generation when I talked to him at KubeCon. So Joe, that might be a good good thing to look at. I'll see if I can find the email and get it your way.
Yeah, please forward it.
Cool. All right, does anyone have any other updates or fun stories from vacation? Work appropriate.
I was fumbling, but I finally did find the link to Savita's excellent kubelet flag issue. So if you are looking for something to model your work around for something like the controller manager, or want to get involved there, or just learn about a lot of esoteric kubelet flags and kind of understand what the context and like properties of those flags are, go ahead and take a look at her issue. It's really well put together.
Did you post that in the Slack channel?
It is in the meeting notes.
Okay, all right, perfect.
Yeah.
Thanks, Lee.
Yeah, and you can find the meeting notes at the top of the Slack.
Cool. All right, thanks everyone. Have a great day. Happy New Year, and see you in the office hours or next week.
Cheers.
Yeah, bye-bye.